All right, everybody. Thanks for all tuning in. We're about to get started very shortly, so just bear with the brother for a moment. I'm just trying to make sure some things are straight before we get into this. I think we're good. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. So today's date, July 6, 2019, and this is how the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most, Will Buchanan, and on How the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week, and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, this is an adult podcast, which things of adult nature may be said and things of a graphic nature may be shown, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from everybody from that, welcome. Let's go ahead and get into it. So, of course, the 4th of July has passed. For all those that celebrated, personally, I'm not one of them, because if you follow my Facebook post, you'll see that I have a very different perspective when it comes to the 4th. However, let's go ahead and knock out all the dumb stuff Trump did, because with the 4th, he wanted to make it about himself. And how, you may ask? Well, he did it in very many ways. Let's start with actually the parade first.
Of July. $2.5 million big. He's diverting that amount of money from the National Park Service to cover the cost of all the pomp and circumstance, including military tanks. So I want to bring in Karen Travers at the White House, and we have Stephanie Ramos at the Lincoln Memorial. Stephanie, what do we expect to see? What should we expect to see?
Well, a lot of military hardware, Kimberly, at least 2 Abrams tanks, 2 Bradley fighting vehicles. One of them is behind me, pre-positioned here really close to the Lincoln Memorial. And we're told that in about another hour or so, they're going to move these vehicles a little closer to the memorial where they will be positioned for the big event tomorrow. And right now, the Jumbotron has already been set up, the risers, the stage, getting ready for the big event tomorrow. Other elements that we'll see tomorrow, military units, marching bands, floats, fighter jets, everyone gearing up for the big event. Now, I do want to point out some of the things that we will see tomorrow aren't really all that new. Military units, for instance, have been parading in DC's 4th of July events for many, many years. But what's different about this is that it's basically 2 dueling events. We've got the president's event and then DC's traditional event that happens year after year. And we've heard from DC politicians that they say they've gone to extreme lengths to accommodate the president's requests. Kimberly?
Yeah, so Karen, a lot of people are upset about this. They're boycotting it on Twitter. It's trending. Can you explain to us what the controversy is?
Well, the White House says this is about patriotism, not politics, Kimberly, but this is Washington. So politics creeps into everything that happens, and it certainly does in the Trump administration. The president has wanted to do an event like this, and he wants to celebrate the military, in his words, but critics say that this is more about showing military force, military might, and not honoring the service members themselves, of course, by doing the flyovers and bringing in the tanks to the National Mall. This is also an event that every year is fully open to the public. People can just walk down to the National Mall with their blankets, spend a couple of hours, have a picnic, and by the president appearing there, everything takes on a bit of a partisan tone. I mean, I think critics will say that whenever the president delivers speeches at rallies, at the White House, everything, he does inject that partisanship to this, so they're expecting that that will happen tomorrow, which is, of course, the nation's birthday. The White House is insisting that that's not what this is about. This is patriotism, and the president has every right to celebrate the 4th of July in any way he wants to.
So, Karen, this was the president's idea to do this.
Oh, this was something that was sparked by a parade he saw in France in 2017. The president made a visit there at the invitation of French President Emmanuel Macron, and part of the Bastille Day festivities there was an impressive military parade, and the president couldn't stop talking about it. He loved what he saw, he thought it was fantastic, and he wanted to do it here in the United States. Kimberly, he tried to do this last year. He wanted to do a big Veterans Day event in Washington, and it didn't really get off the ground running. There was a lot of pushback from city officials about the cost. There was a lot of concern about potential damage to infrastructure here in the city if you had very heavy military vehicles coming down the city streets. So ultimately, the plan was scrapped, but the president didn't drop it. He wanted to do it in some capacity. So what he's essentially doing tomorrow here in D.C. is adding his own event to events that have been taking place in Washington on July 4th for many, many years.
And Stephanie, what do we know about this high price tag?
Well, Kimberly, the administration won't really say just how much this event is going to cost. But what we do know is that the Washington Post is reporting that the National Park Service has diverted $2.5 million from entrance and recreation fees to cover the costs here. And now those costs were primarily intended to cover any expenses for parks across the country. So that's as far as what we know right now. And who knows, we may learn more in the coming days once this event takes place.
Yes, once this event takes place, $2.5 million just to show what exactly? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a big fan of the 4th of July. I never, it's like I was telling somebody else, the 4th of July kind of lost its exuberance on me. It's just another day to hang out, be with family and friends, and grill and whatnot. I have no issue with it. For all those that want to celebrate the 4th, celebrate the 4th. I mean, if you see a reason to, then, knock yourself out. However, the whole thing about this, which I don't get, is that Trump basically, this isn't the first time he's tried it. Like they said in the video, he tried it once before, and it was crazy that they was shot down once. Now he's like, well, I want tanks, I want this. And I'm like, you're going to do this to celebrate the troops. And I'm thinking, and as I'm listening to this, how do you honestly celebrate the troops? I mean, aside from fixing the VA system, exactly giving the health care that soldiers and vets need, as far as making sure that they're taken care of, whether they're on duty or off, whether they're on duty or resign from service, that's taking care of the veterans. Rolling military tanks up on a parade seems a little dictatorship to me. And again, it's a wasted effort. I mean, of all the things, like, what is it about? They always say it's not about showing. It's not about what they say. It's not about showing American partisan and being, showing everything that's great about America. No, you are pretty much showing that this is what we can bring to the party if you fuck with us. And I'm like, I've never felt pride about seeing a tank roll down a street and saying it's American independence. It never sit there. I never looked at a tank and said, yeah, America. And it's like, a lot of people sit there and go, it's like, well, you just don't understand. Well, it's just a simple fact of the matter is that we're just celebrating what we are. A bunch of bullies? If you're celebrating that you're a bunch of bullies going in different countries that you shouldn't be, then yeah, I'll give you that. But aside from that, it's like, what was the whole point of the entire 4th of July celebration except for Donald Trump to give himself the dictator's welcome that he's always wanted? Because he loves dictators. He loves them. He wants to emulate them. This should not be surprising that the idea he got was not from France. He got it from his buddy Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong-il has New Year's celebrations in China, in North Korea all the time. But what do you see over there? Tanks. What was the main thing that Baby Huey wanted? Tanks. He wants to be a dictator so bad that he'll emulate other dictators' celebrations to do so. And that's not the only thing, like I said, what this past week was interesting. Of course, they did get to his actual, of course, it rained, and for better parts of America, it did rain on the 4th. And this, to me, was probably the best thing that could show you that of all the signs this man should not be running the country, was pretty much this.
This evening, in the joy of freedom, we remember that all share a truly extraordinary heritage. Together, we are part of one of the greatest stories ever told, the story of America. It is the epic tale of a great nation whose people have risked everything for what they know is right and what they know is true. It is the chronicle of brave citizens who never give up on the dream of a better and brighter future. And it is the saga of 13 separate colonies that united to form the most just and virtuous republic ever conceived. On this day, 243 years ago, our founding fathers pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to declare independence and defend our God-given rights. Thomas Jefferson wrote the words that forever changed the course of humanity. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Now, you would think straightforwardly that that's the beginning of his 4th of July speech. And what was so interesting about the fact that it rained, I mean, nothing screams like nature is mad at you that it rained on the 4th. And it literally, he still kept going as he was speaking from his podium of bulletproof glass. But it amazed me so where he sat there and said, we are talking about the ever-going amazing story that is America. And yet forgetting about the fact that we're still detaining immigrants and separating their children from them and putting children in holding facilities and making sure they're not getting adequate care. Let's not forget about the fact that soldiers are still sitting in Iraq for reasons beyond our comprehension. And on top of that, we're still finding a way to somehow start a war with Iran. But America is this great country, and this is the one part that kills me about the whole thing, is that he kept on inserting the word God-given. It's not how the story, it's not how it goes, sir. It's not God-given, but then again, he's got to appeal to his base. I really should not be surprised about that. And it's amazing to me how folks are just eating that up until it gets to a few points. What point, you might be asking? If you've been reading Facebook or you've been seeing social media, you've probably seen this point get passed. And if you're like me, who watched the actual entire speech just to basically keep an opinion about it, this part right here, I still scratch my head about.
Our Army manned the airport. It ran the ramparts. It took over the airports. It did everything it had to do. And at Fort McHenry, under the rocket's red glare, it had nothing but victory. I stood in the rain, the teleprompter went out, it went kaput.
I'm sorry. You can't. Okay. They rammed the airport. They own the air in 1812 and in the 1700s. What was George Washington's call sign? Cherry tree? I mean, you're gonna sit there and instead of just admitting fault, which again, I don't expect Baby Huey to ever admit he's wrong, because he still hasn't apologized for the Exonerated Five, or the Central Park Five as we know it. He is still yet to apologize that he went on a campaign about that. He is still yet to apologize about his grabbing women by the pussy. He is still yet to apologize for a number of things that he's done. I should not be surprised that he's not going to apologize that somehow the Revolutionary War had air support. Few problems with that. I mean, that's like the War of 1812 had air support. We took the airports. Could you? So instead of Washington crossing the Delaware, he could have hopped on Southwest and been there like in 10 minutes. Oh, thank you, Trump. We really didn't know that air support was an option before the 20th century. I'm sorry. And then, in the middle of that blunder, in the middle of it, he had you know what? He had a way out. He had a way out. He could have just sat there and said, you know what? I was following the teleprompter. Yeah, wait a minute. Time out. I'm not even going to give him that excuse. Anybody with a minor knowledge of historical events or a little bit of common sense would have realized that planes could not have been around since the time of 1812 or the 1700s. Even if a teleprompter goes out and you're sitting there saying those words, you would think, be like, wait a minute, that's not right. But no, he kept going. And then when confronted about it, well, the teleprompter went out, it was raining, I was standing out in the rain. No, fool, you pretty much do not care about what you say. I mean, it's obvious you have no recollection of U.S. history, but at the same time, you didn't care what you said. It was just enough to keep your base going, because nobody had the heart there to correct you about anything that you said, which I found amazing. But again, it's your flock. They're not going to question you. They're going to let you run with it. So I shouldn't really be surprised about that. So again, it's like, you think he had the opportunity to sit there and go, you know what, I fucked up, I apologize, that wasn't right. But it's Trump. When's the last time he apologized? I mean, he didn't even apologize. He hadn't even apologized for cheating on his last 3 wives. But aside from that, the last thing I got for Trump, because I wanted to get him out of the way, because it's like I said, things that he said and done are beyond stupidity, and just add them to the pile of things we already have. He also said this on Tucker Carlson, which is, his favorite place to go is Fox News. He said this wonderful little tidbit.
Very different from our cities.
Yep. Well, some of our cities.
Some of our cities. But New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, they've got a major problem with...
It's very sad.
With filth.
Very sad.
Why is that?
It's a phenomenon that started 2 years ago. It's disgraceful. I'm going to maybe... And I'm looking at it very seriously. We're doing some other things, as you probably noticed, like some of the very important things that we're doing now. But we're looking at it very seriously, because you can't do that. You can't have what's happening where police officers are getting sick just by walking the beat. I mean, they're getting actually very sick. Where people are getting sick, where the people living there are living in hell too, although some of them have mental problems where they don't even know they're living that way. In fact, perhaps they like living that way. They can't do that. We cannot ruin our cities. And you have people that work in those cities. They work in office buildings, and to get into the building, they have to walk through a scene that nobody would have believed possible 3 years ago. And this is the liberal establishment. This is what I'm fighting. I don't know if they're afraid of votes. I don't know if they really believe that this should be taking place. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And we may be... I had a situation when I first became president. We had certain areas of Washington, D.C. where that was starting to happen. And I ended it very quickly. I said, you can't do that. When we have leaders of the world coming in to see the President of the United States and they're riding down a highway, they can't be looking at that. I really believe that it hurts our country. They can't be looking at scenes like you see in Los Angeles and San Francisco. San Francisco, I own property in San Francisco, so I don't care, except it was so beautiful. And now areas that you used to think as being, really something very special, you take a look at what's going on with San Francisco. It's terrible. So we're looking at it very seriously. We may intercede. We may do something to get that whole thing cleaned up. It's inappropriate. Now, we have to take the people and do something. We have to do something.
Right.
And, we're really not very equipped as a government to be doing that kind of work. That's not really the kind of work that the government probably should be doing. We've never had this in our lives before in our country. And it's not only those few cities, it's a couple of other cities also.
Cities.
At the same time, most of our cities are doing great. But if you look at some of these, they're usually sanctuary cities run by very liberal people, and the states are run by very liberal people. But the thing that nobody can figure out is, do these governors or mayors, do they really think this is a positive? Do they really think this is okay? Because it's not. It's destroying their city. And it's destroying a whole way of life. And it's not our country. It's not what our country is all about.
Okay. This is Trump during an interview with Tucker Carlson, claiming, among other things, that homelessness started 2 years ago. Only, I'm not sure what Trump stands to gain by this claim, which I'm assuming was just the result of some errant synapse firing, and then he said it and went with it, and then Tucker Carlson nodded along, and here we have two full-grown adult men literally playing pretend with each other on national television. First off, if homelessness started 2 years ago, the event that this phenomenon coincides on, Democrats have to contend with this issue because Democrats generally run cities where homelessness is uniquely an issue because of population density. In other words, Republicans don't even have the opportunity to tackle homelessness because their politics are so bad that they can't get elected in cities. So it's not like Republicans have figured it out and solved homelessness because low population density in the areas they govern makes homelessness a non-issue for them. Their politics being so bad that they can't get elected in a high-density area doesn't get them bragging rights. Because, let's just be honest here, if anyone thinks that Republicans would more effectively solve the issue of homelessness than Democrats, if anyone really thinks that the party whose sole mission is to cut spending on anyone not in the top 1%, then you're kidding yourself. If Trump and Republicans are so worried about homelessness, they might want to look into programs that actually help people, instead of catering exclusively to the rich and powerful. Like, for example, one thing that might help people not live on the streets is, I don't know, a system where everyone has universal access to affordable healthcare? I mean, it is staggering the extent to which Trump is complaining about a problem without even bothering to look at its root causes. It's like if he left the stove on 24 hours a day and then complained that the fire department wasn't coming quickly enough to put the constant fires out. I'm no pyrotechnics expert, but maybe the problem isn't the fire department. It's telling, too, that for Trump, the issue isn't homelessness in and of itself, it's the optics of homelessness. Trump is embarrassed that world leaders have to see such a thing during lavish state visits, but less embarrassed that he's presiding over a country that doesn't offer them protections, a country that's actively trying to take health insurance away from them, a country that uses our limited resources to prop up corporations that can't manage to pay workers a decent wage, a country that dumps hundreds of millions of dollars into the pockets of military contractors. That's where the money in this country flows, while middle-class Americans are left with crumbs and the poor are left with even less. If given the choice between seeing that kind of leadership and a homeless guy on the streets, I wouldn't have to think too hard about which one embarrasses me more. But here's the craziest part. Tucker Carlson never calls him out on anything. He just sits there and humors Trump as he wheels off on his nonsensical tirade. Would it hurt him so much to simply say, "What do you mean homelessness started 2 years ago?" He can even say, "Sir," add in just enough sycophantism that Trump feels coddled while still doing his duty of calling out, that thing that is completely insane and untrue. But of course, he nods along, absorbing the fairy tale without an ounce of pushback, managing to somehow achieve the Herculean task of decimating any credibility he still had. Seriously, imagine going in front of the entire country on national TV, listening to somebody say something with zero basis in reality like, mixing red and yellow makes purple, and your response is, of course, yes. If Tucker Carlson could feel shame, this could have been a pretty bad day for him. But to give you an idea of just how much of an illegitimate circus this whole Fox News interview between Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump was, here's the very next line. And this should pretty much put everything into perspective.
We have still more of that interview with the president. We asked him later in that hour about UFOs.
Sad but true. The man, Brian said it best. Literally, that Trump has discovered that homelessness started 2 years ago. And you would think for Fox News being so fucking fair and balanced and Tucker Carlson being the poster child because Sean Hannity is probably on his way out, would have sat there and corrected him like, Mr. Trump, homelessness has been a factor since the late 60s. I mean, it's been a factor since the 50s. It's almost like prostitution. It's almost becoming, right next to the world's oldest profession is honestly the world's oldest problem. And just like Brian said, it's almost like he really didn't give it a lot of consideration in what he was just saying. But the simple fact of the matter is, homelessness didn't start 2 years ago. What you noticed, like a lot of Republicans and a lot of Republican-minded people have noticed, is just as the income-wage gap is growing in so many ways and forms, so is homelessness. Take my home state of Tennessee, for example. Homelessness has increased over the last 5 years. Why? Income is stagnant, but the actual prices of rent, food, utilities, things of that nature is constantly going up, almost ridiculously. Like, we have apartments that are being built that have New York rent. I'm talking $15,000, $25,000, even $3,000 a month. Now, of course, there's going to be those people that do have that can afford it, but those very same apartments and places that are being built are actually outputting those other people who used to live in those homes, but because those properties have been purchased and the rent's been jacked up, have forced those people to move or become homeless. So it's amazing to me where, I know, as a country, it never ceases to amaze me that for the simple fact of the matter is, we're not graded by how rich we are, which we shouldn't be. We should be graded by how the amount of poverty we have, which is growing. But then again, Trump just now realizing that homelessness started 2 years ago, and Tucker Carlson can sit there and have the balls to correct him on that. Really, to this point, should be not surprising. But again, added to the pile of things that Trump will not apologize for when he knows he's wrong. But just wanted to point that out because, like I said, he said a lot of dumb shit this week, and it's just fun to bring that back up. But speaking of dumb shit, this also hit the news, and also I was laughing about it tremendously. You've probably seen this too.
Nike is canceling a sneaker that featured an old version of the American flag. Nike asked stores to return the Air Max 1 Quick Strike 4th of July sneaker after the company received a complaint from Colin Kaepernick. The Wall Street Journal reported Kaepernick said he and others found the shoe, which featured the Betsy Ross flag, offensive because of its connection to an era of slavery. It's unclear if any of the shoes were sold. This is the second instance of Nike removing a product in recent days. It stopped selling some products in China after a fashion designer's support for protests in Hong Kong sparked a social media backlash.
Yes, Colin Kaepernick has still managed to piss off so-called patriots. For the simple fact of the matter is, the Betsy Ross shoe, which Nike was going to come out with, as you've seen reported, that Kaepernick and others have had it halted. And if you've seen the social media on this, we're going to ban Nike. We're going to cancel Nike. You know, it's just like when a few months back, where Nike had Colin Kaepernick on their commercial, believe in something, even if it means it costs you everything. Which again, Nike is a business. Let's just be honest about that. I'm not saying, and I get on my Facebook post about Business 101. You stand neutral on most issues. Now, understandably, there are issues out there that all business should take a moral obligation to. But for the most part, you're pretty much Switzerland. You're neutral. So I get that Nike want to sit there and take a stand, which they can do. They're a business. And it's amazing to me that the same people who say, I want to live my life the way I want to, will be the first will be the first in line to sit there and go, well, we need to ban Nike because I want my flag. Nike is a business. They're putting out a product that you purchase. You're just a consumer. You're not a stakeholder. So for the simple fact of the matter is that Nike decides that they want to listen to Colin Kaepernick and say, well, maybe we shouldn't put out the flag. You, being a consumer, have no say over what they want to do. I mean, case in point, you're still going to go buy Nike. Nike is one of those mainstaying shoe and clothing companies that honestly is not going away anytime soon. And guess what? Those very same people who are protesting and burning Nikes and Kaepernick jerseys and all that crap will be the same ones that will be buying Nike shoes by next week, I guarantee you. Why? Because their so-called patriotism is bullshit. But again, it's just funny to see there, so many people's like, oh, well, we shouldn't listen to Cap. He did this, he did that. And forgetting the fact that this man actually went toe-to-toe with the NFL. Reason being because he was blackballed. Because, like I said, the greatest example I can point out, Colin Kaepernick took a knee to basically protest police brutality and injustice against African American and minorities. And he took a knee. And he kept taking a knee. He didn't disrespect the flag. He took a knee, which again was recommended to him by a former Army Ranger who said that taking a knee was actually in respect to the military forces. Because you got to remember, Colin Kaepernick used to just sit down until a former Army Ranger sat there and suggested that he took a knee. So he went from sitting down to taking a knee, which again is respect to the armed forces. So, and people are still mad about that. Especially if you go to certain games, the Star Spangled or the National Anthem getting played. A lot of people, like myself, I take the knee. And it is amazing to me that the look I get, I do that for two reasons. One, because the simple fact of the matter, it's just like I say it like this. We all in grade school had to sit there and take the Pledge of Allegiance. But I stopped doing it in 6th grade. The reason why is basically because not only did I not understand the words, but I never understood why every morning I had to get up, put my hand over my heart, recite words I didn't understand about a flag that I didn't really care about, because I was still not seen as an American citizen. I was still not seen as equal. I was seen as a Negro, but actually I was seen as that word. I don't like saying that word. I don't like saying that word because that's not me and I don't know any. But that's still for the most part, how we're seen by the world. So again, it's like pledging allegiance to a flag I never understood, because the flag never written, because people who actually said the same words to the flag didn't see me as equal. So, that kind of resonated with me as even going into now, where you see that mess, and I'm like, you're getting mad about what a business does? It's a business. You don't like the business? Don't buy Nike. I mean, good luck. Because they do make some good products. But again, it's almost like I'll use another example, like Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is astounding LGBT. They're against them in every shape, form, or matter. They're Jeebus chicken. What do you expect? But they are honestly so big in franchising that even though, despite protests, despite all they're doing, they're still a huge company. And there are some of those, like myself, who still enjoy it. So you still can protest, but at the same time, they're so big of a corporation that you don't see them failing anytime soon. Same thing with Nike. So again, it's not surprising to me that people are burning Nikes and whatnot. I'm sorry. Even if I have a Patriots jersey, which I'm not a fan of the Patriots, but my friend John is, who's now watching. Hi, John. I wouldn't burn a jersey. Sell it. Or donate it. But why burn something? That just never made any sense to me on what some people were doing with Nikes. But again, just funny as shit to say that, because like I said, it's almost like what Kaepernick is trying to do, which I respect the brother, because he went through a Shawshank Redemption mile of shit, because everybody kept saying, oh, this was that, he's not really for this, and things of that nature. I mean, the man stood on his principles, and that's hard to do when you have millions of dollars thrown at you that you never had before. And that man did it. That man did it with grace. I have to give him that. But I just think it's kind of asinine that individuals such as those who are literally protesting this. Again, it's just funny. There is just no other way I can put that. That it's funny that they are sitting there. And I actually, there's actually another. I wish I could have found it. There was actually another news article out there that was selling Betsy Ross shirts in protest to Nike dropping the Betsy Ross flag shoes. I wish I could have found it. I just couldn't find it fast enough. But it was just interesting how quickly business kicks in supporting patriotism. But again, shouldn't really be surprised about that. But switching gears here, because I want to get into something else. There seems to be this growing trend of police, and I say actually I take that back. That's the wrong words to say. We're starting to see now that more, ever since cell phones and social media, we're starting to see more and more police honestly just going overboard with minority kids. And it's almost like, well, let me play this so you guys see where I'm coming from.
Sheriff Deputy Christopher Krakovich on the restricted administrative assignment following this incident in Tamarack on Thursday.
In this video, you allegedly see Krakovich along with two other BSO deputies pepper spraying a 15-year-old, throwing him to the ground, slamming his face into the pavement repeatedly, and then punching him in the head. In court today, the teen's family in tears.
What are you doing? He's bleeding!
I think it was outrageous. I think anybody in this community who looks at that video would say the same thing.
Broward County Mayor Mark Bogan echoing the teen's attorney.
Getting his head banged into the cement and punched is not only inappropriate, but it's unacceptable.
In the incident report, Krakovich says that the 3 officers were outnumbered by the 200-plus students and that they felt threatened and had to act quickly. The violence broke out in the McDonald's parking lot on North Pine Island Road in Tamarack on Thursday. Students from nearby J.P. Taravella High School were originally there to watch 2 teens fight. Then deputies arrived and things took a turn. One deputy is seen sitting on a teen, restraining him. That's when the 15-year-old intervened and deputies used force.
We will look at this as a fact-finding measure to ensure that we hold folks accountable.
Sheriff Gregory Toney vowing to conduct a transparent and thorough investigation. Broward Sheriff Deputy Christopher Krakovich.
So again, it's one of those things to where, like I said, it's starting to get to where I don't want to say we're getting desensitized to it, but that's just one of many. I'm almost certain that if we actually could, if we at the time, we could actually search throughout the week and actually find other video like that of where police just seem to be going after minority kids. And it's amazing to me that the excuse is, and I say excuse, because let's be honest, it's an excuse, that they fear for their lives. Here's my thing. How in the world, when you have a gun, you have a taser, you have mace, you have backup bulletproof vest, and you have tactical training, and yet you are going up against kids, even though they have you outnumbered 200, so-called, I didn't see 200, but let's just say they have you outnumbered 20 to 50 to 3, 20 to 3. You have the gun. Doesn't mean that you should go for it. But at the same time, it's like, whatever happened to de-escalation? At the same time, whatever happened to dispersing the crowd? What happened to doing it without arresting? Because let's be honest, as a black man, it's almost those things I have to keep in mind when I'm out and about. Because, it's our interaction with police is honestly starting to become a fact of matter. It's like, am I going to make it home tonight? Simply put, because this cop doesn't know how to do its job. This cop doesn't know how to do their job, or is terrible at their job. Or if the simple fact of the matter is, are they just looking for a reason for me to do something? And if they are, then I'm on the ground. And it's amazing to me where a lot of people will side with cops like, well, they should just comply. They should just do this. Okay, if you're still saying that, fuck you. Because they've complied. When you complied, you got shot. When you didn't comply, you got shot. When the officer felt his life was in danger, you got shot. So we've had multiple instances where 3 people have all followed the same things and they still wound up dead. But you know who didn't wind up dead? The cop. You know who a lot of them got reassigned to different states as law enforcement officers? Those very same ones who are killed with badges. Now, thankfully, this young man did not die, but he was injured, and I hope the family sues the pants off the state and that police department. I hope, because I'm going to be kind of honest, I don't see the officers facing any type of charges. We've been down this road before. We have been down this road too many times before. And I'll tell you how I know. Because literally, Minneapolis officer Mohammed Sanu was just tried for killing a white woman. He was tried for killing a white woman who called 911. Same exact situation. Feared for his life. Shot the woman. He was decommissioned by the police department and was sentenced to jail. The family won a $20+ million wrongful death suit with the state, and this man was tried. Now, keep in mind, this all happened in the fact of 2 years. Amber Gilliard is still waiting her day in court for breaking into an apartment and killing a man and swearing up and down that he was in her apartment. She is still waiting trial. So again, forgive me if I'm just a little bit biased when I say fuck the police, but it's hard to be on the police's side when they have the law and everything else working against them. And 9 times out of 10, the victim is not the victim, being the black man, is never there to defend himself. In this case, they are, and like I said, I hope that teen and his family goes for the jugular, and I hope, it would be my sincere hope that those cops who with that excessive force do get decommissioned. But then again, it only takes 6 months to be a cop. 6 months. 6 months to be a cop, and I'm thinking to myself, that's not enough training. Especially in simple fact of the matter is, if you don't come in there with de-escalation first and then just force later, maybe you shouldn't be a cop. Just saying. And then again, I'm just surprised about the level of silence I get from so-called good cops that see this behavior and don't call it out. Except for one cop, and she's a pariah now. So again, that shouldn't be surprising about the code of silence that the blue people have. But then again, I also expected Blue Lives Matter and All Lives Matter to show up, and you guys are about as quiet as the Me Too movement right now. So, but anyway, moving right along, I'm pretty sure you guys, like, you watched my podcast last week. I did talk about the woman, Marsha Jones, who was in an altercation with another woman. She was pregnant. She was actually shot by the other person and lost the baby. And they tried to basically charge this woman with manslaughter of her child. And if you're wondering, yes, it was in a state where they tried to pass the bullshit abortion laws. Thankfully, the district attorney actually had the good sense not to move forward.
Stated, this is truly a disturbing and heartbreaking case. An unborn child was tragically lost, and families on both sides of this matter have suffered. Nothing we do today or in the future will change that reality. The issue before us is whether it's appropriate to try to hold someone legally culpable for the actions that led to the death of the unborn child. There are no winners, only losers in this sad ordeal. After reviewing the facts of this case and the applicable state law, I have determined that it is not in the best interest of justice to pursue prosecution of Ms. Jones on the misdemeanor charge for which she was indicted by the grand jury. Therefore, I am hereby dismissing this case, and no further legal action will be taken against Ms. Jones in this matter. It is important to point out that our decision, my decision, not to prosecute Ms. Jones is in no way a criticism of the hard-working and conscientious members of the Jefferson County Bessemer Cutoff Grand Jury who answered the call to public duty. These citizens took the evidence presented by them by the Pleasant Grove Police Department and made what they feel is to be a reasonable decision to indict Ms. Jones. The members of the grand jury took to heart that the life of an unborn child was violently ended and believed someone should be held accountable. But in the interest of all concerned, we are not prosecuting this case, and I have taken the stand that this office would no further prosecute this matter.
And again, all of that is correct. Like I said, the heartbeat bill that a lot of these states have put in to combat Roe versus Wade, unfortunately, this is a share of that. Now, it is tragic that this woman did lose her child during an altercation, and that she has to live with that. And the simple fact of the matter is, this is why I'm saying not only were these fetal heartbeat laws are coming into place, this is what's going to be used against women. I mean, granted, in her case, it was tragic that she lost her child, but what's not to say that the same thing can't happen as far as a woman that wants an abortion, or a woman that just does something of that sort, or in some altercation runs the same way as Ms. Jones does. Thankfully, the DA for Jefferson County decided that, oh no, this isn't worth prosecuting because it's stupid. I mean, she she says it in so many words, but when it comes down to it, it is asinine to prosecute this case. Simply put. But that's why I said, thankfully, like I said, most DAs in these states where these laws are not enforcing it. They are literally not trying those cases. And thankfully, good sense comes into place for that, because I kind of felt bad. I mean, I really felt bad for that woman, because she was already facing the loss of her child. Now she was almost facing life imprisonment because she didn't even fire the gun, which the other person wasn't even charged for. She was actually given self-defense, if you can believe that shit. Um, but thankfully, intelligence has prevailed in that sense. Now, also this other one that's kind of makes me mad is, well, I wouldn't say kind of makes me mad. It really pisses me off because, like I said, what's a growing trend when it comes to police brutality being more and more videotaped, and yet nothing is being done. And I'm telling you, on a side note, that's going to come to a head. And you think cops are fearing for their lives now? Let that keep going, because eventually people aren't going to take that no more. But this next story, which still, it almost makes me not want to be a parent. I'm going to be honest with you. But let me go ahead and play it so you guys see where I'm coming from.
For a decision by a New Jersey judge, a 16-year-old boy accused of raping an intoxicated 16-year-old girl and sending a video of the incident to friends. The judge refusing to try the boy as an adult because, he wrote in his decision, the boy comes from a good family, has good grades, and is an Eagle Scout. ABC's Lindsay Davis has more.
This New Jersey judge under fire tonight after declining the prosecutor's motion to try a 16-year-old accused of sexually assaulting another teen as an adult last summer. The family court judge citing that the young man was an Eagle Scout who comes from a good family who put him into an excellent school where he was doing extremely well.
This is absolutely an example of privilege playing out in the judicial system.
The teen allegedly took video of the attack and shared it with friends, texting, "When your first time having sex was rape." But Judge James Troiano, seen here on this website that rates judges, says he believes there's a distinction between a sexual assault and rape. He goes on to classify rape as generally 2 or more males involved, either at gunpoint or weapon. Critics say it shows a deep bias in the judge's decision-making.
I would be shocked to see this result in any case where the defendant came from a family that didn't have financial means to send their son to a good high school and that they were college bound. That doesn't happen in those cases.
An appeals court has now reversed his decision, and that teen will now be treated as an adult. And tonight there are now calls for that judge to be removed.
And that says a lot right there. Number one, I can't be a father. I can't be a father to a daughter, because if that happened to my child and the judge tried to sit there and say he comes from a good family, that judge and that child would be 6 feet under. That's why I couldn't be a parent. You're not going to sit there and tell me for the simple fact of the matter about, well, he just comes from a good family and he's an Eagle Scout and his family put him in a school where he can succeed. And just like the lady said, it sounds like privilege, but even more so, it seems to be a trend. And keep in mind, what I used to say about sexual assault victims, I take that back now. Because I was one of those ones where I was like, I looked at it and said, I just can't understand why it's so hard for them to come forward. I used to say that. I used to say for some fact the matter is that, God forbid if it ever happened to me, I'd be able to come forward and be able to say something. I understand, and I apologize for that. I apologize for my ignorance and not understanding from seeing it from their view and seeing that if they did come forward, that they still don't see justice. That if they did come forward, that there is a chance the person who assaulted them may not even get tried. I get that now. I see why a lot of people don't come forward now. And it's depressing. It's sad. It makes me angry that a kid, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm not going to call him a kid. A teenager would basically do that to another teenager and then videotape it and then share it, and then would have been like, when your first time having sex was rape. The fact that he knew that he raped this woman is enough to make him not be a child anymore. He should not be tried as an adult. And if I was that girl's father, whoo, I'd be in jail for killing that child. I'm not gonna lie. That I would be in jail with a smile on my face before putting that kid in the ground, just because of how strongly I feel about this. But again, it's just like the Brock Turners and all them out there. It seems to be a growing trend that with privilege and with money and with connections, that they just seem to get away with this. And it just amazes me so that how much the judges in this case are being biased about it. But thankfully, the appeals court have seen this. I hope that Judge honestly gets disbarred, Because if his idea of rape is literally 2 or 3 more guys at gunpoint on someone, he does not need to be a judge. And the simple fact of the matter is just that he doesn't just need to be there. There's just no point in that. But again, happy that ruling got thrown out. And honestly, I hope that kid gets put in jail for the rest of his life. He destroyed him. In my mind, if you rape someone, you have destroyed their life. So therefore, the only equal punishment, aside from putting your ass in the ground, is take away your life. Because that is equivalent, that is justice in itself. That if you ruined a life, your life should also be ruined. Same put. But again, glad that it's actually being reviewed, and hopefully that kid's going to get the book thrown at him, as he should be. Because no amount of money is going to keep you out of jail once you ruin someone else's life. But again, switching gears for a second, going into the economy. You know, the economy that says we're having the greatest time right now, that people are already growing weary about hiring. Keep in mind that the first quarter has passed, and that they had sat there and said that it was doing moderately well. Moderately well being bullshit, because basically it's about the stocks. Keep in mind that actual hiring between June and July has actually slowed down, and some small business owners are starting to be conservative, into which they are already cutting jobs and making people part-timers. What does that tell you? That apparently we are going to, it's the signs of an actual, it's the signs of an actual recession, is what it is. There's just no way around it. So, for the simple fact of the matter, as I usually tell people, if it gets to the point of where we're about to have a recession, and you can kind of tell because the top percent is actually making more, the lower percent is actually making less. At the same time, everything except your income is coming up. We've seen these signs before, usually Great Depression or recession, as we had back during the Bush years. So really shouldn't be surprised about that. So again, for us to be having a great economy, we're actually having a sucky-ass economy. But also, one other thing I actually am happy about, some actually good news, is that that California has actually did something right. They actually banned racial discrimination against natural hair. Natural hair basically being if you have braids or locks or kinks or twists, micro braids, weaves. I can go down the list, but let's just kind of be honest. It's really geared more toward black people because they can't emulate our hairstyles. So what they do, they ban them. And they try, because Tennessee also has that, where, you know, certain jobs actually have certain hairstyle rules. Like, for example, I know my locks are messed up because I have an afro here and locks back there. I will get this thing sorted out very soon. But again, hairstyles like what I have right now, 9 times out of 10 wouldn't be allowed. But old boy can come in with spiked hair, tattoos, and looks like he ran through a metal gun, and he's fine. But not to say that, you know, I'm against all that. If that's how you want to live, that's how you want to live. But I'm just saying from a job standpoint, you'll probably find him more than you'll find me. So I am glad that California is taking that step. Other states are starting to do that. Just the simple fact of the matter is just that if people want to wear their hair natural, there should be no harm in that. The only thing about it is it should be clean and doesn't stink. That's it. Aside from that, you shouldn't be judged by your hairstyle anyway. I mean, isn't that what our creed is about? That, you know, these people love to talk about so much? But again, happy about that. Some other quick news we'll get to before we get to our good news segment. Who got the biggest tax refund these years? I'm sorry, I just completely screwed the pooch on that one. Who got the biggest tax refunds this year? Not us, because anybody between $250,000 and $500,000 actually got a tax refund this year. Now, if you're like me, you probably did not get a tax refund. But the simple fact of the matter is, you actually wound up owing. The reason why? Trump's tax plan. Trump's tax plan actually screwed anybody over that was actually under 85,000. Actually, I take it back. Yeah, 85,000. So if you're not 85,000. If you're 75,000 and under, you probably pay the IRS. However, if you're over it, you got a refund. Why? Those same tax cuts that we were given as to the middle class and lower were given to the upper class. What happened to those tax cuts that were given to us? Well, we basically paid for the higher ups. So therefore, instead of the refund that you were probably expecting, you probably got back a bill, which is kind of fucked up if you think about it, because you've been paying over the entire year with federal income taxes anyway. So, again, it's like I told somebody else, and you can argue with me all you want to about this, but for the simple fact of the matter, it's just that whenever there's a Republican president, it just seems to be that taxes are reduced on the rich and increased in the lower end, and that's what caused the economy to dip. But the simple fact of the matter is, unless you actually put more money into the the middle and lower classes, that's what spends the economy, because the top 1% do not spend on anybody but themselves. At this point, how many times are we going to keep showing historical figures about that until people actually get it? That's all I'm saying. So, aside from that, before we get to our good news segment, this other thing I wanted to show about was about climate change. Yes, it is real. Yes, it is happening. And yes, we should be all aware. Why should we be aware of climate change? Basically because of one of the coldest places in the world is currently experiencing this.
Are they great for firefighters? Battling more than 100 wildfires across Alaska, some caused by lightning.
Use your experience, your knowledge, keep your awareness up.
Historic heat, too.
The hottest day of all time.
In Anchorage, the temperature soaring above the previous record to 90 degrees. Expected to stay 10 to 20 degrees above the average, which is 65 degrees, through the weekend.
I like the sun because it's better than snow.
In the lower 48, 4 million people at risk from damaging winds, hail, and possibly tornadoes.
Oh my God.
Like this Independence Day twister hitting Wyoming. Elsewhere in the plains, some outdoor celebrations, a washout in Denver. Strong storms also threatening the Midwest. In Iowa, the roof ripped, walls peeled away by what the National Weather Service says was a microburst, an intense blast of wind from a thunderstorm. And with thunder, warnings about lightning. July, the most active month, 7 deaths so far this year. Mother Nature setting off her own fireworks. Ron Allen, NBC News.
And again, that should tell you a lot. Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska, this week was 95 degrees. One of the coldest places on earth, where usually the average temperature is 35 degrees on a high. I cannot make this up. Anchorage, Alaska, who used to have their highest temperature at 35 degrees, had a record-setting 95 degrees this week. And it's still in the 90s as we speak. Now, what does that say? That says that global warming is real. Climate change is happening. And honestly, I would be very afraid if the polar ice caps completely melted, because that means seawaters will rise and some coastal cities will honestly be underwater. So again, this just tells you that climate change is real and possible, and it is happening, and that we do all need to do our part, especially those, I'm talking to you, big oil, because our dependency on gas emitting carbons is starting to take effect. And you can tell that by the weather we're having, because when you say winter is coming, now at this point it's just pretty much a toss-up, depending on how Mother Nature is feeling. And Mother Nature right now is doing Russian roulette across the United States. So really should not be surprised about that. But again, when you have Anchorage, Alaska in the 95 degrees, that alone should tell you that things are needing to change. Just saying. But anyway, we now come to our good news segment. Now, what is our good news segment? Usually, as we usually talk here on How the Frack We Got Here, we usually go to doom and gloom. Sometimes it's not always good news, so we always try to end on a positive note. I know because we do this podcast on the weekend, sun's out, because the sun's out here in Tennessee, that we're just trying to basically, leave it out on a good note. And I've actually found 3 stories which I found very interesting. And I'm going to start with the first one, with Pharrell and what he's doing.
Award winner Pharrell Williams has made dozens of high school grads happy in a special kind of way. I want you to watch as the music mogul spoke at the commencement ceremony for the Promise Academy, which is run by the Harlem Children's Zone.
So let me be clear. For every member of the 2019 graduating class is guaranteed an internship waiting for them, you, next summer.
One of those tears you just heard came from this young woman, this graduate sitting beside me. Brianna Pope is attending Syracuse University in the fall. So nice to meet you, and a massive congratulations.
Nice to meet you too. Thank
Are you
you.
pinching yourself? I mean, this is all happening.
I was pinching myself at the moment.
I'm sure you were. I mean, when you were sitting out there and you were listening to Pharrell, first of all, that you had Pharrell speaking at your graduation, okay. And then secondly, when he's like, I'm giving all of you guys internships after your freshman year. What were you thinking in that moment?
I was surprised and shocked. At first, I was shocked that Pharrell actually came. And then when I was recording his speech, when he said that, I was like,
you were sitting there with your phone?
Yeah.
Did you do sort of like a, what?
I recorded, then I flipped the camera onto me and my friend Janai. I was like, what? Did he just say that? Like, for
Do
real?
you know what the internship will entail? I mean,
No, he really just said you get like a list of A-list internships that'll be ready for you next year. And we'll let you know after a while.
just a mega music industry mogul, so I
Yeah.
think you're pretty set. Whatever magic he has in store for you. You come from a single parent household. You're one of so many kids each and every year who needs to work, make money, school, books, the whole thing. What will this internship mean for you on a really personal level?
It'll mean a lot. It'll mean that I could pursue my dreams without settling for less, because I know that I want to pursue animation.
Animation.
If I could work at a company like DreamWorks, Pixar,
DreamWorks, Pixar, if anyone's listening, we've got a pretty promising young woman right here. Why are you into that?
Because it's sort of like me and my dad's situation. We love to draw, anime, and stuff like that. Like after he passed, I promised myself that I would keep continuing my
Keep it
passion.
alive.
And I hope she actually gets to do that too, because honestly, that's very cool what Pharrell did as far as promising internships to those 114 classes, almost similar. And I like this trend. I know usually we talk about trends a lot. I like this trend of seeing those go back to schools and give these kids a leg up. Excuse me. And I'm talking about the billionaire, I believe the billionaire at Morehouse College, who turned around and paid the student debt for the graduating class, and it's cool to me. I still sat there and I still was so jealous of them bastards. But still, to graduate and not be in debt is probably one of the best gifts you can give to a college graduate. And at the same time, these high school graduates are now about to get a leg up in the job world and get internships. Depending on where they're heading at, but it's still a beautiful thing, and I hope that young woman, I hope you get a DreamWorks, I hope you get a DreamWorks, I hope you get a Pixar, I hope you get on the anime studios, I hope you get with Studio Ghibli, if you know who Studio Ghibli is, and or Perot, or any of the top anime studios wherever you decide to go. I hope she gets it, because to me that gives me hope that if people can go back and give back and pay it forward, that is beautiful. That is cool. I can't knock it because, again, and number one, how does Pharrell stay so fucking young? I mean, isn't that dude like in his 50s by now? But that's not the point. But again, I just love the simple fact of the matter is like stories like that, to where it just makes you feel good and you hope for the future, because now a new generation has a leg up and they can be competitive. I can't knock that at all. But speaking of pay it forward, there was also this other story. And I know I don't talk about churches a lot, but I love the fact that this church in Michigan actually raised enough money to pay out the medical debt for 2,000 families. And they said that the church purchased more than $1.8 million worth of medical debt on the cheap. And so what they did with that medical debt was actually pay it off. And I just thought to myself the entire time, a church literally purchased medical debt and paid it off. And I know for a lot of people when they say, well, what about churches, Will? And I was like, yeah, I can go into the whole thing about how some churches are mega franchises and that the so-called preachers are millionaires and some are billionaires. And yet with that wealth, they could turn around and make a lot of their flock's lives a little bit easier. Really could, instead of buying their wife's Lamborghini trucks. Relentless church. Which we haven't really heard much about that guy since he got caught cheating on his wife, but apparently the devil made him do it. Figure that shit out. But again, it's nice to see stories like this, because I've said it best, and I've said this on Facebook posts, that the whole entire idea of religion, and that there are churches out there, there are guys, there are actually good, decent people who are religious but aren't pushing their issues, they're not pushing their beliefs on anybody, just being good, decent people, and their churches are welcoming everybody. And there are many people and locations out there, they just get overshadowed and lumped in with these dicks who will fleece their flocks talking about how they need private jets because they can't fly a commercial, and have these multi-million-dollar homes and these mega churches and could do so much more. But they get lumped in with those fools rather than this one church that did a great thing and helped out a lot of people. And I think that they should be given credit for that. And again, it's one of those things to where, like I said, it's a whole paying it forward thing. It's actually just taking the ability that you have and just trying to help people. And I can't knock that. That's a beautiful thing, especially for that church. But fuck Relentless Church, though. And T.D. Jakes, and Joel Osteen, and pretty much anybody that's got a 401k. Pretty much anybody that's got a university and a wing named after them. I'm talking about you, Bishop Walker, here in Mount Zion. I'm definitely talking about you. And I'm pretty sure you got some people that watch this podcast. And let's just say I don't think, let me leave that alone. But again, I'm talking about those churches that have mega franchises and a pastorship, like senior lead and all that crap. Just makes no sense to me. But anyway, still stick with the good news. We're not going to slay that. So speaking of my last ticket segment, teens during the summer usually are just either trying to find jobs or just really just trying to relax until the school year starts to get up again. But I like what these kids did.
And we went to McDonald's and just bought a couple of cheeseburgers, and we went to a food outlet and bought some bananas and a case of water. I posted on Facebook, I was tagging folks. I was just like, this is what we did on our free time that we had. So support started coming. To see somebody out here trying to do things like this, I immediately teamed up with these guys because we need people like this out here, giving back. I think that'll be the start of, Birmingham becoming, something better, than where we are now.
It seems I've been appointed to that position, yes. That's the easy part. I mean, they do most of the work. I just do the cooking and help them pack it up. And I'm very proud to be part of it.
I love them. And tell them keep up the good work. Hey, everybody needs support. Everybody go through situations as they come up. So, everybody makes mistakes. Somebody just got to be there to help them.
And again, that's beautiful. I can't. There's nothing more I can add on to that, but the simple fact of the matter is just that if you have young people that are just trying to make a difference in this world, what more needs to be said? They saw a problem and they did what they can to help with it, and they're doing great. And as you can see, that their efforts are being appreciated and their support being gathered for it. There's honestly no words that can be put to it except, well done, gentlemen. Very outstanding work, and hope you keep it up, because, like I said, that gives me hope for the next generation. But aside from that, that's going to be the end of our podcast for this week. So just some shameless plug before we get out of here. Of course, with my show, How the Frack We Got Here, is usually every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. Also, much later today, we will actually have the Off Limits podcast, which will be from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Off Limits podcast is where me and Thomas, and sometimes a group of people like myself, will usually go into it with the uncomfortable subjects. Why? Because a long time ago, we were always told that you should never talk about certain subjects with people because you don't want to upset them. I am on the opposite end. I want to talk about those uncomfortable subjects because the only way you can be comfortable with something is to make it is basically go from uncomfortable to comfortable But you have to be willing to talk about it. And by talk about it, I mean not yelling about it, but basically hearing one side out as they hear you out, and then honestly come to an understanding on that. That's how Off Limits Podcast works. But again, that won't be until later today from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Also, my other compadre, Thomas, we always call him the Mountain Puncher, will be having his To Be Determined podcast at around 3 p.m. today. What is To Be Determined Podcast? To Be Determined Podcast is a fitness podcast. And as you've ever seen Thomas before, which you've probably seen him on this podcast and on my previous one, he's always in a tank top. And it's not because it's a fashion choice. The man is in the gym 7 days a week. And he's all about fitness, and he actually wants to talk about things that, about things that he's done, has worked for him, has not worked for him, certain workouts, certain foods, and just certain things that might come up during your journey that basically will help you determine your results to be a better person chasing your zenith. That'll be later today at 3 p.m., in which he'll be on Facebook Live going from there. And aside from our table of bosses that we usually call our podcast group that we call ourselves, two other individuals are also a part of this as well. Let me start with Vaughn, 871's Westbrook on Facebook. He actually just had a Rhythmness, which I'm going to go back and check out later on. What is Rhythmness? Rhythmness is a musical review podcast in which he just finds certain albums, both the classics and the currents, and basically rates them to a 4-tier system. If you want to know what that 4-tier system is, you had to watch Rhythmness to find out. He also has the I Get That Reference VST, which is basically a various news podcast, which goes over music, video games, certain events that may be happening, interactive show just like mine. And he also has Random as Fuck with Uncle VZ. What is Random as Fuck? Random as Fuck is the pool of ratchetness we sometimes dip our toes into to basically give us a break from life and basically just have a chuckle at it. Some videos will make you laugh, some videos will make you cry, some videos will make you wonder what the fuck. And my favorite video till to this day on Random as Fuck is the simple fact of a woman that's sitting at a Burger King waiting for a change, but the Burger King is on fire and the employees are outside looking at this woman as she's standing right at the driver's side window waiting for a change as the building is on fire. I cannot make that up. It is actually available on YouTube if you want to look it up. But again, Random as Fuck, and all his shows can be found under his Facebook page. There's actually a calendar there where you can see all where he actually has a schedule. If you look up A71 Weatherspoon on Facebook, you'll be able to see it from there. Also, my other buddy, Trace Brown, DJ King Eddie Wayne, has a podcast of his own. He actually has The Bump Down, which is a musical podcast, which is music, culture, knowledge, numbers, in which he goes over everything in the recording industry as well as what's hot on the charts and on the mainstream underground. And also, if you're an inspiring artist that just wants music to be played, look up DJ King Eddie Wayne on YouTube, Trace Brown on Facebook, and he'll be able to tell you exactly how to get your music to him and basically be able to play it. Also, Vaughn has the same thing too for Step Into the Ring. For Rhythmness, you can reach out to bigbza.podcast on YouTube or A71 Weatherspoon on Facebook, and he'll show you how to get your music to him for his review. Also, with Trace having the bump down, he actually has a Smoke with Truth, as I like to call it, the Check Your Ego at the Door podcast, to where nothing is off limits, sound like mine, except that he goes the unorthodox. He will basically give you the truth. The truth will actually set you free, but at first it will piss you off, but you have to be willing to listen to it to get through it. But again, the Smoke with Truth, which is again a podcast I recommend listening to, would definitely be up your alley to be able to watch that as well. And also, my other buddy, I like to call him White Chocolate, but he calls him, back in the day he was called Powdered Donut. Wingnut Gaming. Wingnut Gaming is my buddy's gaming channel in which he plays Call of Duty, Battlefield, Dauntless, pretty much anything with a first-person shooter. He's probably ahead of it. And of course, he loves to play. And like I said, funny as hell in the commentary. I'm usually on there just to watch sometimes. I actually need to get Battlefield so I actually can play with him during his gaming streams. But aside from that, if you look up Wingnut Gaming on Facebook, you'll be able to follow him and like, share, and subscribe and go from there. And also, we all have YouTube pages, so if you actually look up bigbza.podcast, DJ King and Eddie Wayne, How the Frack We Got Here, and Off Limits Podcast, all of those are active YouTube pages that are currently with all of our video podcasts so far. And of course, aside from that, we will do a Pick Up the Sticks. If not next week, if not this Sunday, it'll definitely be next week. What Pick Up Sticks is our gaming podcast. Whether it might be myself or it might be other individuals there, which we are kind of working that out. But it might actually be next weekend because we're probably going to have a full house next weekend. We'll probably do Pick Up the Sticks then. But aside from that, guys, like I said, with how the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. What is staying informed? Staying informed basically means that you're not accepting everything at face value. You're looking beyond what's there. You're actually going beyond the news, researching for yourself and finding out the truth and being able to explain to somebody what you found and inspiring them to do the same, because an informed community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one, because an uninformed one got us Trump, and that's how the Frack We Got Here. So thank you guys for all watching. Thank you, John. Thank you, Daiquiri, for watching, and everyone else. And again, if you're watching this on the playback, just go ahead and comment as if it's live, because I'm pretty sure you Trump supporters really are going to do that. Aside from that, I got a little bit winded. But aside from that, thank you guys for all watching. Hope to see you guys on the Off on This podcast later on. Have a great weekend, and yeah, that's pretty much it.